What a time to be a newcomer on Capitol Hill. We'll talk with incoming Congressman Tom Barrett. Also new, the Chief of Police in Detroit. We'll talk with Todd Bettison. Today is Sunday, November 24th, 2024, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint as we head into what is always one of the best weeks of the year in Detroit. On Thursday, America's Thanksgiving Parade will make its way down Woodward for the 98th time. And then the other great Detroit tradition, the Lions will take on the Bears at Ford Field. If you love tradition, you love Thanksgiving in Detroit. We can't wait. But before that, we've got a lot to talk about this morning. We are still almost 2 months away from Donald Trump assuming power, but the transition plans have been one headline after another, including a controversial set of appointees. His choice for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, dropped out of consideration this past week. The baggage just got too heavy, but he's not the only nominee causing some friction. Coming up this morning, our first conversation with the new incoming congressman from Michigan's 7th District, Republican Tom Barrett. In Detroit, we also have an incoming police chief, the city's former deputy mayor, Todd Bettison, taking over for James White. He was sworn in as the city's interim police chief, but not lacking for confidence, he told those assembled, "You're looking at your permanent chief right now." Well, what are his plans for the department, and can the city's momentum in fighting violent crime be sustained? And a little later on, a conversation with Faith Fowler, a long overdue chance for her to answer an impossible question from Flashpoint's very early years. It's all today on Flashpoint. Well, the president-elect isn't the only one making transition plans for Washington. So, too, are the newest members of Congress, and that includes Tom Barrett, who won a hard-fought campaign against Curtis Hertel. He is the incoming congressman in Michigan's 7th District, and he joins me now. Congressman-elect probably has a good ring to it to you. Tom, thanks very much, and congratulations on the win.
Thank you, Devin, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. I want to start with one of the first things that I thought about. The whole world, of course, watches American elections so closely, and I wondered right at the outset, what was the future for, and what were people thinking in Ukraine? And since then, over this last 2 weeks, we have had saber rattling that is getting very, very loud from Russia. Give me your thoughts on what you're watching there and your concerns now as you move into a position where you'll actually have a vote on these matters.
Yeah, it's obviously highly concerning when you see war escalating, whether it's in Ukraine or other parts of the globe. It was frankly, a key feature in why I decided to run for office. My background in the Army being what it is, I spent over 2 decades in the Army, deployed a number of places around the world, and I see our world now as a less safe place. And you see war getting more and more escalated. I am encouraged. I hope that with strong leadership coming into the White House, that we will be able to put a cap on the escalation of war and begin to de-escalate these things so that they don't get out of hand and they don't escalate further, draw NATO into a continental conflict with Russia, for example, that would commit American troops to conflicts abroad. Those are all things that we want to prevent from happening. I'm hoping to, have an elevated voice on that as a member of Congress. Although I'll be a freshman, I feel like my background on national security affairs and the military and doing those things will be a voice worth listening to. And I certainly feel like these are so important, and we have to get them right because the margin for failure is just absolutely unacceptable.
Not getting it right is clearly not a choice, not acceptable. It's funny, I've been thinking about your background this past week, and as we talk now about some of the appointees and nominees that Donald Trump has made, you've spent a lot more time in the military than Pete Hegseth, and to become the I don't know if you feel that you would be up to being a Secretary of Defense, but this is an almost $1 trillion company, basically, to run. I'm wondering what you think of somebody who's been on Fox News most of the last couple of years as being whether or not he's really capable of running the Defense Department, which again has a budget over $900 billion.
Well, I'm not auditioning for Secretary of Defense, so you can take my name out of consideration. Okay. But I will say this, I think this is a clear priority for the president to really put in place people who are not going to just follow the status quo. And we've seen, again, to reflect on my own background and my own motivation for running, the just absolutely gut punch of morale devastation and unacceptable failure of what happened in the withdrawal from Afghanistan by this administration and this president. So if the answer to these problems are so-called experts, how did we have 13 of America's best people go and get slaughtered in Afghanistan in a completely preventable attack, and then those same so-called experts telling us that this was an amazing achievement, that this was a perfectly executed plan, that there was nothing that they could have done better? They lied to the American people the days following that attack in Afghanistan when America launched a drone strike, allegedly against ISIS fighters, that actually killed an entire family of children. And again, that was our Department of Defense lying to the American people over and over and over again. So I'm not convinced that you need to be a four-star admiral or a four-star general to be able to execute the will of the American people that are so frustrated by what they see coming out of the Department of Defense, coming out of these failures and lying to us to our face. Those are things that are unacceptable.
Well, as someone who, I was curious to ask you, as someone who served in places like Kuwait and Iraq, Pete Hegseth has also gotten a lot of attention for saying that he doesn't believe that women should serve in combat. How do you feel about women in combat?
I served alongside women in units that I was a part of when I was in Iraq. I think the methodology of war today is not what it was a generation or two ago when, frontline combat existed differently. This is now a really, it's an incredibly different type of battlefield dynamic today than it ever has before. I'm not even sure that you could distill out combat roles from non-combat roles when you have the modern battlefield being what it is today. There's really no way to distinguish between the two, quite honestly.
Interesting. I think a lot of your fellow Republicans were a little relieved to see Matt Gaetz stand down. That was just going to be a really tough one for a lot of people to swallow. But I'm curious about your thoughts then on the other appointees that you've seen so far.
Yeah, I'm certainly very aware that I'm not even seated in the United States Congress yet, and the United States Senate will have the role in really examining and confirming and going through their process to deliberate, with their advise and consent process that is constitutionally granted to them for these appointees. I think that's a serious role for the president to have and a serious role for the Senate to have as well. I think it's expected that, within reason, appointees by a president who wins a duly elected president of the United States with the will of the people to do that should be given deference for their appointees. But certainly there is that role for the Senate to play. And I'm, very willing to see the two sides, how they come together. And I think there'll be, a period of time early in the administration where we see where those go. But, I'm withholding judgment until I see a little bit more of where those two, where those two interplays go. I think that the Senate ought to confirm nominees in a fashion where we can get these departments staffed and filled and move forward with the business of the people, because there is so much fixing to be done. 80% of Americans feel the country's on the wrong track. Well, I share that opinion with them. It's going to take Congress, the Senate, the president, and his appointees to really work together to bring the country back on the right side.
That's what I was going to ask you. I got about half a minute left. As you leave for Washington in January, the priority that you believe that your constituents are sending you there with?
Yeah, I think the top most acute problem we have is facing our absolutely disastrous border right now, illegal border crossings. We've got to put a stop to that and then get to work on fixing the economy so that the cost of living is more affordable for American families.
Tom Barrett is the new Republican congressman from Michigan's 7th District. Tom, I really appreciate the time. Congratulations, and I know we'll be talking to you down the road.
Thank you so much for having me on, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah, you got it. All right, we'll be back with more in just a minute. We will talk about the newly minted interim police chief in the city of Detroit. Todd Bettison joins me next on Flashpoint. A quick note before this conversation with the new interim police chief. Timing is everything, and unfortunately my interview with Todd Bettison was taped just before news broke of the 30 or so officers who've been on the force without being properly licensed. We will work to dig into that in a future conversation. All right, welcome back. Change is coming for the city of Detroit. Last week, Mayor Duggan was here to talk about his decision not to run for another term. We'll have him for another year, but there is already change afoot at the Detroit Police Department. I'm very happy to have with me the newly sworn interim police chief, Todd Bettison. Todd, thanks for being here. You were not shy about saying you don't expect that interim tag to stick around.
No, absolutely not. I call myself Chief Bettison. I'm already manifested it, forecasted it, and no, I'm not making interim decisions. I am the chief of police, and so we know it's a protocol, but...
yeah, the city has to, by its charter, has to now conduct a nationwide search.
Yeah, absolutely, right. They do, but I've been with the department, did 27 years, and so worked under Chief Isaiah McKinnon, Benny Napoleon. I even worked up under Jerry Oliver.
That's right.
Ella Bully Cummings. Every chief of police that you can, Warren Evans, and so I have
James
been
Craig,
close.
James White.
Craig.
We can go through all.
I was James White, first assistant chief, so I just kind of just really think back.
It's interesting. So you were with the department all that time, then you moved into being deputy mayor, and now you're back in the force. And I wonder what that time as deputy mayor has done for you now in your new role, because you saw a lot of the city, but not in a law enforcement way. It was a different way to see the city, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was the best experience. I mean, really, it was amazing. I got a chance to see it from a global perspective. I truly understand. As deputy mayor, I had multiple departments report to me. I was the fix-it person within the mayor's administration. The tough departments, the mayor said, okay, Todd, that's now yours. So I had DDOT, the Department of Transportation, BSEED. I had the housing department. I created an entity called Community Violence Intervention, and so it goes on and on.
He was handing you all the porcupines, that's for sure.
Yeah, the fire department, Homeland Security. So that was within my portfolio as well.
You come in at a time where things have all been moving the right way, especially with respect to violent crime.
Yes.
Detroit in 2023, for last year, fewest number of homicides in, was it 57 years?
Yeah.
What is it that you think has been working, and talk about your challenge of trying to continue that?
Oh, I know it's been working. I've been right there the whole time. So like I said, I was Chief White's first assistant chief, so I was there, went to be deputy mayor, and I was still right there having bi-weekly meetings, Mayor Duggan and I, with the chief, all the command team, and so supporting. We know that technology is instrumental. So making sure that with even getting the evolved metal detectors, those high density ones that we place downtown and throughout even the city to make sure that large gatherings are safe, which is critical. We used them during the NFL draft. We're going to use them, for other events as well, and we continue to use them. Shot Spotter.
Which you were in charge of for a while, right?
Well, yes, but Shot Spotter is critical because it's the detection of gunfire, and we were able to, get that, and of course I, advocated and lobbied City Council and others to get the funding and making sure that we get that spread throughout the city. So in cops, making sure the cops get raises, and then also our community violence intervention, our Shot Stopper program is similar to Shot Spotter, but we're investing in community violence intervention, and we got 6 groups in 6 areas within the city. They have 3 to 4 square miles, and in the most violent areas, and they have been reducing homicides, and we can really measure it because they're beating the citywide trend.
You're walking this thin line between security and people's right to privacy. You've heard this come up an awful lot with things like facial recognition technology, with Shot Spotter, with the metal detectors everywhere. How do you, thread that needle?
Well, it's about public safety, and so I think that we all agree that we want to be safe, and by having the proper protocols and procedures so that we are not violating citizens' rights. And you thread the needle by having the things in place where it's a check here, a check there, and let's face it, we all enjoy technology and we want the advances. With our iPhone, nobody out there has an iPhone 1 or 2 or 3. Everybody has moved up when it comes to technology, and we have no problem opening our phone with facial recognition. And so we have to be responsible as government, though, to only use it in the cases where somebody has committed a crime, and we only use it at the Detroit Police Department for violent offenses, no misdemeanor. We're not just randomly checking. You know, we have to have reasonable suspicion, and we have our protocols and procedure. And then some places you don't have a right to privacy out in the public when you're, readily exposed.
Yeah.
With ShotSpotter, I think that we all would want to know if somebody went out and fired a gun, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a citizen. If you're firing a gun in a residential community in our city, we want to know. And so it doesn't discriminate by race, gender, or any other thing.
Yeah.
It only detects gunfire.
We've also seen big problems with these big gatherings like block parties and things that you're talking about. What's your plan for addressing things like that?
Oh my God. So when Chief White created that plan in the Detroit Police Department executive team, we all sat down together on that. And so when I said during my introduction by the mayor as interim chief that I was Mr. Plug and Play, I have been there. Meaning, we're going to continue to deploy our officers and monitor social media so that we can get ahead of the block parties. We're not going to allow them to blow up and get big where you get 400 or 500 people at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And you have a situation where we know what happens at the block parties. It's young folks drinking, drugs, music, and it creates a situation
and some
where it's
people are packing.
Yeah, they're absolutely packing. It creates a situation where you have drugs, alcohol, and guns.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yes, and so by doing that proactively in shedding those, and we shouldn't even call them block parties. Call them illegal street parties. No. They're illegal parties and gatherings.
Well, Todd, obviously Detroit is has been on a roll. There's still more to be done. There's still too many neighborhoods that are struggle with crime every day. We wish you nothing but the best and really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll wrap things up. We come back, a conversation with the Reverend Faith Fowler. Got to correct a long ago wrong on this program. This is Flashpoint at Local 4. As you may know, I am finishing up my run at Local 4 in a few weeks. It got me to thinking about this program, which has been on the air now for 26 years, and I got to thinking about fixing an error from long, long ago. The Reverend Faith Fowler of Cass Community Social Services was a guest on one of the early programs. We were talking about the best ways for people to help those in need. It was around the holidays. And as we neared a commercial break, I quite hilariously said to Faith, "Do you think we can ever truly eradicate poverty?" And I'm afraid I've only got about 20 seconds left. Well, Faith looked at me with the incredulity that such a ridiculous 20-second time limit deserves, and Faith is back with me this morning. You and I, fortunately, over the years have always laughed about that moment.
I think I laughed on air that day, as I recall. Like, you've got to be kidding me, Devin.
I'm going to save that question for a little bit later. But as we head now into this season of giving and our thoughts turn to those in need, you've spent your life devoted to this space, and there are a lot of people who want to help and aren't always sure of the best way to help. Right.
I always advise people to look at it two ways, to think about charity that deals with immediate needs. You know, people are hungry, people are without shelter, or clothing, that kind of thing. So to find an organization that is addressing emergency needs for people, because that's very important. But then also at the same time to look at structural things that make a difference, right? Affordable housing we've been talking about a lot lately. The wages that people make or keep after taxes. I mean, big issues that will impact things long term. I think we can do both. We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
On housing, you've got a lot of attention at Cass for the Little Houses program.
Most of it positive. And,
of course. Well, no good deed goes unpunished.
There you go.
But where are we on that program? You've got now, I think, 25 houses.
We have 25 completed and occupied, and with people and pets, by the way. We have lots of dogs now and 3 turtles. So I didn't even know people had turtles as pets, but they do. 2 people received their homes, meaning their deeds, last September. And I can't tell you their names and wouldn't tell you that stuff, but
Sure.
one's a younger person, one's an older person. The younger person, when he moved in, was making $480 a month. So you can imagine nobody would give somebody
course.
like that a mortgage, right?
No.
You just wouldn't take that chance. But he came in and worked the program rather well, started making more money, by the way, and was a good resident, did everything he was expected to do. So September 30th, we handed him his deed, and the house, according to Zillow, is worth $90,000.
How about that?
So you're talking about residential stability and economic mobility at the same
Right,
time,
right.
which was the goal. So now we're hoping to build 20 more, and we've started that process of raising money to do it.
You've been around Detroit a long time. You've seen all these changes. The city is in many ways in better shape than it has been in so long.
Yeah.
We just finished talking to Todd Bettison about the drop in crime and
great
violent
man.
crime.
Yeah.
But I don't imagine that you are seeing fewer people of need.
We're not seeing fewer people, Devin, and beyond that, we're seeing, though, different people. When I started at CAST 30 years ago, by the way, now you know I'm really old, people who were unhoused, people who were homeless were mostly men, middle-aged men. Now we're seeing children in large numbers, families, mostly led by women, but occasionally by men, who are homeless and I'm trying to think, last year we had 166 kids in the shelter. Now, not all at the same time, but throughout the year.
Yeah. And that's
Again,
just you at CAST.
That's just CAST, yeah. We're one of many organizations across the city doing good things.
Yeah. I have now 2 minutes left instead of about 20 seconds.
Okay, all right.
I want to hear what you've learned, though, about the nature of poverty in America and the best ways that maybe we can start to address it on a broader, more meaningful way.
Well, I think we do it the same way I suggested at the beginning, and that is
as individual givers.
Well,
Same
as
thing,
individual givers, to look at the immediate things we can and should and must do, right? There shouldn't be 166 children living in their car, right? They just shouldn't, or unable to get food, or unable to have clothing, or unable to get a good education. And by the way, I would say we should look at those immediate things here and globally. When you think about the number of people living on $2 a day, it's 700 million people. And it's 3 billion people living on less than $7 a day.
Right.
So you can imagine, just one of the things we're doing this holiday is printing a book for a man in Liberia who's digging wells so people can have fresh water. Now, when's the last time you thought about, can I get a glass of water without walking 2 miles to a dirty stream or river and carrying it on my head back? First of all, I wasted all that time. Second of all, I don't know that it's healthy. So looking at things locally, there are plenty of things for us to apply ourselves. And I would say Detroiters, Metro Detroiters, are some of the most generous people on the planet.
They sure are, which is really heartwarming still. Thanks for coming back, Faith. It's really good to see you again.
I miss you already.
Oh, I appreciate that very,
right.
very much. And you are among the really special people that have made this such a wonderful time in my life as well. Thanks so much. That's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for being here. There's no place else for you to be on Thursday morning than right here, unless you're going to be there in person. But other than that, be with us as we bring you America's Thanksgiving Parade, presented by Gardner White. We will see you then, and happy Thanksgiving.